Flying saucers, UFOs, or figments of people's imagination. Whatever they are, there appears to be more of them. According to the latest research, a UFO is sighted somewhere on the planet every 3 minutes. This will come as no surprise to some of our audience. Hands up all the people here in Nottingham today who have seen an unidentified flying object. Well, Dorothy, let's start with you. I've mentioned you already. You were, as I say, on the night shift, working as a nurse down in Portsmouth, I think.
Yes, that's right.
And suddenly you saw something. Tell us what you saw.
I took a shortcut from one corridor to the other across the triangle, and I looked up and I saw a red rectangle about 2 feet. Red, purple red, and it just stood there, and I stood and looked at it, and I thought, was it a flying rocket for Guy Fawkes night? Was it an aeroplane? And I decided it wasn't, and I went round in a circle and had a look at this thing. But it just stayed where it was in the sky. There was no halo around it. There was nothing at all. I got the suggestion of a slight dip, indented cup thing at the top of it, and then it just suddenly went off. There was a blaze of light and it disappeared. I got to the ward that I was supposed to relieve the nurse on, and she said, "Where have you been?" And I thought I'd watched this for a couple of minutes, and it was more than 45 minutes later before I got to the ward.
So you'd lost some time, as it were.
Well, it would appear so, yes.
Was it bonfire time?
Yeah, it was round about either the week before or the week after Guy Fawkes, which made me think it might be a firework, but I wasn't sure. By the time I watched it, then I was convinced no, it wasn't.
What was the reaction of people like your hubby here and your friends when you told them about this?
Well, working at a psychiatric hospital, the first thing I said was, "I think I've seen a flying saucer." And she said, "Yes, well, I'll get the injection when I come back from my job."
You're supposed to be on the staff, yes?
I was on the staff.
Yeah.
And the following morning I went home and I told my husband I'd seen a flying saucer, and he said, "Yes, dear, I'll run you a bath and you'll have a good sleep." And the following night I got phone calls from all the staff. "There are men in green coats here waiting to take you away. There is an ambulance, a flying saucer coming for you in the morning." And I got these comments, and then 2 days later the national newspapers had headlines, "South of England and north of France, sightings seen." Some people had seen men in silver suits, some people had been taken up, and I felt quite unimportant then, because all I'd seen was just a little red thing in the sky.
But suffice to say that you were not alone. At or around that period, there were several sightings of something people had seen that they imagined anyway.
No, in the national newspapers,
Yeah.
I personally never met anyone till last night who had seen anything.
That's what I meant, but there were others apart from you who'd seen other things separately elsewhere. You've had a similar experience, haven't you?
Yes.
You come from a part of the world I know, Pendle, in Lancashire. Yes. Now, twice, I gather.
Yes.
What happened in your case?
13 years ago, I was walking with my middle daughter, and we saw a red light, which I said, "Look at that aeroplane. It's flying low. It's going to go into Pendle if it's not careful." And all of a sudden, it just turned round like that and went at the side of us and followed. We were about 100 yards away from our house, and it just followed us to our house. We ran in. My daughter was terrified. We looked through the curtains. It had gone as though it was going to the next village. And then I went to the door, and it came from over our house. It was like it was hovering. And then it just went back to where it was going from. And then 4 years ago, I saw a great big star in the sky, which I thought was really a massive star. That's all I thought it was. And a friend was talking to me, and she kept saying, "What are you looking at behind me?" I said, "Look at that big star over Pendle." I thought it looked near. And she said, "Oh, yeah." So we carried on talking, and then all of a sudden, it just separated into two stars, and with a big orange vapour trail in the middle. And the star at this side shot something orange to the floor and started going up into the sky, and it started flashing on and off, just like an aeroplane. And then all of a sudden, it turned into a craft. And that's all that was. It went up into the sky.
A craft?
Yeah.
What do you mean, like a...
Well, you would say, "Look at that aeroplane," but it's come off that star. You know, I just thought, well, it looks like an aeroplane, but at first it was a star, then it was flashing in and out, then it just turned into a craft. Now, the star that was left, that shot something orange to the floor, that went up into the sky, and then off that came a red craft with a vapour trail at the back of it, and that went the other way.
Pendle Hill is famous for witches, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. That may or may not be anything to do with it. Strange it should happen there. I mean, what did you... I mean, when you sat down, when you went home and sat down and thought, had a cup of tea and took a side, I mean, what did you think?
I thought it was marvellous, because that just clinched it for me, because for 13 years I've seen things, shapes and all sorts. I'm not saying there are little green men or spaceships or anything. I just know that there are unidentified things in the sky. But that just clinched it for me, because to me, nobody can explain. All right, you can say there were 2 aeroplanes, but you can say, well, they must have hangars in the sky now.
Let me introduce you to a chap along here called Keith. Now, Keith was in the RAF, so he knows about aeroplanes. And he knows, presumably, about things that you see when you're flying up in the sky. And yet you had an experience, I understand, when you were based in Cyprus.
1956, yes.
Tell us about it.
We were coming back from the mess about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon, no flying going on. And we spotted a thing, it looked like a pencil, if you like, in the sky. Somebody said, well, who's flying today? You know, nobody. Then we realised it wasn't moving, so we lined it up with the top of a telegraph pole so we could get some as to what it was doing, you know, and it just sat there for about 20 minutes. Then one of the aircraft was sent up after it. It got up to about 500 or 600 feet. And this thing just turned on its side and it became a silver disc, which then took off and it just gathered speed and went at a hell of a rate.
So, let me get this straight. Top brass in the RAF took this so seriously that they
That's right.
sent an RAF pilot up into the sky to monitor it, and that RAF pilot confirmed what you chaps coming out of the mess at 2 o'clock in the afternoon had seen yourselves.
That's right, yeah.
I mean,
picked up on radar. But the interesting thing, I think, on the squadron, everybody, pilots included, generally accepted that UFOs existed.
Did they?
Oh, yes, it was a typical thing that, oh, they've seen a UFO today. One came from Malta over to North Africa. We didn't know it was coming, we thought it was a plane. That was in the evening. When it came over, we just thought another blasted crash was going to happen, you know, because it was silent, so we thought the engines had stopped. When it was discovered that somebody said over the radio, oh, it passed over Malta a few moments ago, that's what you've seen. And that was on radar, and air traffic knew it was there.
Omar, you know a thing or two about these matters. What is it these chaps are seeing?
Well, they are seeing alien craft piloted by intelligent beings, we believe. I've been investigating UFOs for about 25 years, and I've discussed or spoken to aircraft pilots, policemen, clergymen, right through to experiences that they've encountered themselves. I've spoken to pilots who've picked these things up on radar while travelling in a Trident in 1967 from Portugal. I've spoken to policemen who have been on duty in the early hours of the morning and seen cigar-shaped objects rising up from behind trees. But of course, even a policeman, if he says that he's seen something like this, people might joke. But mind you, if a policeman said he saw you breaking into a shop, then you'd end up with 2 years. But a UFO is a different matter.
Okay. I mean, I think it's taken as read. There are lots of unexplained things that can be seen in the sky. But
yes.
Let's assume that everything you say is absolutely correct. There are alien spacecraft, unidentified flying objects. Colin, what you were up there. What are they doing? Why are they there? Who are they looking at? And where are they from?
Well, they're certainly studying us. I think possibly later in the programme you might be discussing what they're up to, but I've interviewed people that virtually have been up to these things and almost kicked the tyres, as you might say. There have been recognisable shapes, portholes, coloured lights, and at times the witnesses have received messages from the craft.
Really?
Yes.
Saying what?
That the beings in these craft are the watchers, in other words, the guardians of Earth.
This gets more and more fascinating as we go on. Who else has seen, I'll come back to that later, but who else has seen UFOs? Hands up. Right, let's start here, lady here. What have you seen?
I saw a red light and a white light in the sky, stationed, and they came together and they followed us for 2 hours in the car, and they came over the car
For 2 hours?
Well, yeah, about 2 hours, 50 miles. I'm actually saying 2 hours. It took us 2 hours going in the morning and 3 hours coming back. I don't know why.
And how do you explain that?
I can't explain it. I've no idea.
It couldn't have been 2 stars, could have...
No, I saw the object when it came over the car.
Gentleman down there had his hand up. What did you see?
Well, I was on my way to work and I saw 3, what I thought was clouds, but there was disc shape in the sky. Beautiful the morning, not a cloud in sight except for these 3 things. And I saw a jet with no vapour trail going towards it.
You mean a real jet? Or
yeah, a real
proper
jet.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I live near Birmingham Airport, so it could have been an airliner going to the airport. And as it got, I don't know the distance, but as it got closer to these 3 objects, they moved across the horizon very fast and just stopped in another place on the horizon. Just went whack like that and stopped there. And then behind this big jet, I saw smaller jets with vapour trails following it behind, and from the other side of the horizon of these 3 objects I saw some more vapour trails with some more jets coming towards it. I was waiting for the bus, but I was absolutely transfixed by now at these things. I'd seen them move and stop dead, and as I looked up into the sky as the jets got closer, they just took off. And at that point I thought to myself, well, God help this world if we're up against something like that that's against us. I mean, these people here think they're friendly. Well, I don't know that view at all. I would say, you know, that they definitely exist, and you've got to sort of, I don't know, try and get some defence against them.
2 shots behind. Gentleman in the grey suit first.
I saw what I thought must have been one of these vehicles, and it appeared through the window. It came towards me through the window.
Where, at home?
Yes, and it was only about 2 feet in diameter and a greenish-grey colour, and the shape of it was like a very thick magnifying glass, if you know, a double convex arrangement, and it came up to me, it didn't speak to me, but I could get the mental transference that don't be afraid, we're friendly.
This reminds me of that ad for that washing up liquid. But, I mean, whoosh through the window. Now, again...
But not fast, no.
What happened when it got in the house?
Well, it stayed there for a while and then disappeared.
Was there a noise associated
No
with it?
noises at all, no.
But, I mean, would it come into your kitchen? Where did it come?
No, it was in the lounge.
It came into the lounge. And did it circle round?
No, it just came in slowly through the window and stopped in front of me. And then I got this impression, well, you know, a mental transference that it was friendly and not to be afraid, and they were there to do a certain job.
What do you think these people are seeing? You describe yourself as a sort of agony aunt for people like this, because they come to you, you've written books on the subject, lots of them, and they come to you saying, explain this to me. Explain this to me, Jenny. Explain it to me.
Well, the first thing you've got to understand is that almost everybody who has a UFO experience is sincere. They are not deluded. Most of the time, they're not hoaxing a story. But what they're doing is describing strange things which are unidentifiable to them. That doesn't mean they're unidentifiable in a literal sense to everybody else. We find when we investigate sightings with the British UFO Research Association all over the country that we can identify about 95%, as high as that, of the things that are seen.
So hang on, if you can identify 95% of the things, does that mean they're not unidentified flying objects?
Well, they become IFOs, or identified flying objects. That's what we call them.
But they're not sort of space men from. They're not men from outer space. They're not flying saucers.
Those things aren't. No.
They are other things.
There can be many different things. There's wonderful things in the sky which most of the time we never look at, because we all wander around staring at our feet most of the time rather than looking up there at what's there.
Okay, well, let's just have a look for the benefit of everyone at home and our audience here. Let's just have a look at a couple of the stills from your book. The first up, one that to me, to all intents and purposes, looks just like a flying saucer. Now, what is this?
Well, unfortunately, with photographs of UFOs, the more like a flying saucer it looks, usually the less reliable the evidence is. UFO photographs tend on the whole to be blobs of light in the sky, because that's what UFOs are. They don't unfortunately manifest like this. So I'd say most investigators would have a dubious relationship with a sighting like this.
What is this?
Well, we don't know. It's a UFO, obviously, because we're not here to say this person has faked that photograph. But I would say that very few investigators would regard it as reliable proof of an alien invasion.
Although although we're not here to say that, it is nevertheless a possibility that it's faked, isn't it?
Some, very few cases are. Obviously, to fake a photograph is better than just to make up a story, so there are more fake photographs than that.
Okay, let's have a look at this one. Now, that looks like a red cloud.
That's exactly what it is. It's what's called a lenticular cloud, which is a rare type of cloud, which looks saucer-like and floats around very... And you'd be amazed how many people see this and think it's a UFO, because there are puzzling things up there. Our eyes can play funny tricks with this as well. I'm not saying that witnesses have spots before their eyes and see things. Don't want to give that impression at all. And when I say that 95% are explained, that also means 5% aren't. And we're dealing with hundreds of sightings each year in Britain alone, so that still means there's a very good proportion of unexplained evidence.
We have some videotape now, and what people have got to look out for, it's a bit tricky to look to see, but is a little white dot that will move along your screen. We've slowed this down to make it more easy for people to comprehend. Now, do you know where this was taken? What's going on here?
This was taken on the Oxfordshire-Buckinghamshire border by a building surveyor who was travelling to work. He observed this object, managed to film it with his camera that he took in the car to film the building he was working on. And it was also seen independently by groups of children in a school waiting to go into school in the morning, and a teacher travelling to school. So we had 3 independent groups of witnesses seeing the same thing. On the morning when this happened, a US Air Force F-111 jet crashed. We do know there's a relationship between those 2 events. The doubt is whether or not it's actually something in the sky, an electrical phenomenon maybe we don't understand, which caused the aircraft to crash, or maybe it's something connected with the crash, fuel being ejected from it, for instance.
But it's somewhat rum.
Absolutely,
to put it mildly. Now, also on videotape, our last bit of videotape, evidence if you like, is something that a security camera in Warrington picked up, right, in the northwest of England.
Yes.
Now, I haven't seen this before, so you can tell me what's going on here.
There are sort of flashing images from 3 separate cameras which were filming parts of the shopping centre. We've now managed to bring out the frames from one of the cameras, and you can see this object moving around, which they followed with the camera zoomed in and filmed it for about 15 minutes, security guards. We don't know what it is. We've worked with 4 separate universities and skeptical scientists in this country trying to figure it out. Lots of different ideas have been proposed, varying from luminous insects to some kind of strange reflection inside the camera. But it's caused by a real light source outside of the frame of reference of the camera, which is somehow affecting the film there. It's a small object. It's not a spaceship, I'm fairly sure of that. But it is, in the literal sense of the word, an unidentified flying object.
And have you satisfied yourselves, and have these experts you've consulted satisfied themselves that this tape, that other tape, have not in any way been doctored since that film was shot?
Absolutely. Kodak's laboratories in Hemel Hempstead are very helpful with it, and particularly on the video film of the orange blob of light. They have extensively worked on that, and they are satisfied it's a genuine film.
Well. Anybody here seen things like that, by the way? Yes, sir.
My name's John. I was having a Christmas holiday at Matlock, and I saw a storm moving across the sky early in the morning. This is 7:20, and it actually did a right turn. It came up towards us, turned itself inside out, and formed a triangle shape with lights all round. It come to a halt, walking pace, and stopped above his head for 6 minutes.
Now, I bet when you tell your pals in Matlock that, they said, what's your first name?
John.
John? They said, come on, mate, do us a favour.
Honest,
Been on the sauce?
No, I don't drink.
You don't drink?
No.
Well, that's ruled out for certain.
My wife saw it, my daughter saw it. She was 12 at the time. She would not come out because the thing came over the hills, and it was just 3 miles an hour like.
We've got some sceptics here. Yes, sir. Now, tell us, I mean, that evidence on tape, what, old cynic like, even an old cynic like me, I'd say that's a bit strange.
I think there's probably a logical explanation to all these things that people are seeing. There's light bulbs, there's lights in the sky, there's stars, Venus, things like that, and probably all these things can be logically explained. I don't say that people are liars here.
No,
from what I've learned this morning, they are genuine people. But I do think that they, to some extent, want to see what they want to see, and there's also a natural, logical explanation for all these things.
Well, yes.
I have a question, because we can accept that each brain is individually conceptualized. So we all think of different things in different angles. But I'm a bit confused when several people will see the same thing. Okay, there are chemicals in the brain that can actually cause you to hallucinate. We know that. But how do you explain 3 or 4 or 5 people at different points of a geographical frame seeing the same thing?
Don't know. You, sir, we're going to say.
There's a lot of rubbish in the sky that's been left from the all the shuttles and that type of thing. There's thousands and thousands of pieces. Now, that could explain a lot of it, light reflection from the sun or from other objects, and I think that could be a lot of the answer to
We'll put all of these points to our positive believers like Omar, etc., and just tick, and also be asking you to take into account the testimony of this lady here, who's called Linda, when we come back in part 2, because it's Linda I'll be talking to, and Linda had an experience that really, well, she says that she's seen a UFO and she can describe what it's like on board an alien spaceship. So join us for Close Encounters of the 4th kind in just a few minutes. Well, welcome back and say hello to Linda. Now, Linda, you were walking along the banks of the River Mersey in Manchester, in Didsbury, where you live, with 2 of your children.
Yes.
And you saw what?
We were walking along the banks, picking wildflowers. We saw this object come over our heads. It was this oval object, pinky orange, which landed down over a hill vertically. We ran up to see what it was. Our first thought was it was an aircraft on fire. We live quite near Manchester Airport.
It was big?
Oh, it was very big. It was 60 foot across. 60 foot across. When we saw this object hovering 2 foot off the ground. We just stared at it. We were transfixed, the 3 of us. We were just watching this object, and it just seemed to hover, and there was complete silence, no noise at all.
And when you ran towards it, what was happening on the ground?
Well, nothing as
I
we
thought, didn't the
remember.
grass move or something?
That's when we were running back.
When you were running back?
Yes.
What happened?
Yes. When we were running away from the object, the grass seemed to move at the side of us and at the front of us, sort of blowing about.
What, to cut a sort of path for you, as it were?
No, it was, the grass was overgrown on the riverbank, but it seemed to be blowing over.
And when you got home, what happened? What did you...
Well, when we got home, we saw my husband, who then was on a shift, a 2:10 shift, and I said, what are you doing home? Because we'd gone out of the house at 7:30 in the evening, and obviously he was home. It was dark. We didn't realise until 18 months later that there was an hour missing out of our time.
Oh, so you had a similar experience to Dorothy here?
Yes.
Yeah, lost time.
Yes.
And there was some effect on your skin, wasn't there?
Yes,
I was told?
my eyes were burnt and scaly underneath my eyes.
Now, you can't account for that?
No, I can't account for that at all.
It wasn't... Well, it was evening, wasn't it? It wasn't sunny. I mean,
It was dusk. It was
Dusk,
9
so you
o'clock
couldn't have
on an August evening.
So it certainly in Manchester you wouldn't have got a suntan, would you? No,
No, I don't think
right.
so. I hadn't been out that day.
Now, sometime later, 18 months later, just to move this on a bit, you were persuaded to go and see a hypnotist. And
Yes.
you and your daughter, I gather, both gave that hypnotist an almost identical version of
Yes.
what had happened
Yes,
previously.
that's correct.
And when you recounted it to the hypnotist, under hypnosis,
Yes.
what did you tell him?
Under hypnosis, I don't remember anything at all about the hypnosis, only what I have seen on videotape.
Sure.
I must stress this.
You've seen yourself back.
That's correct.
And-
My only conscious memory of this object was seeing the object, it seemed to disappear and appear, and we ran away from it.
Right.
We saw it actually following on the tail of a plane going into Manchester Airport as we were nearing our home. But I don't remember anything about the hypnosis, only what I have seen on videotape. And I find it very hard to accept what I actually said.
Which was?
Under hypnosis. Well, what was said was, I ran down the hill, the 3 of us ran down the hill. We thought we were running home. We went into this man in dark clothing, tall, dark eyes. Then there was a sensation of floating and then being on a table and having feelings of ice put on our legs and lights shone in our eyes, and that's all I remember. And there were 6 of them and they all looked the same. Now, I just can't accept this, but this is what's on the
That's what you said
videotapes.
under hypnosis, right?
That's correct.
Now, I have to say, well, I imagine anyway, that when you recount this story of what happened to you under hypnosis to your chums in Manchester, you don't get an entirely sympathetic hearing.
I don't talk to them a lot about that.
Listen,
They'll know now.
Wendy down here on the front row, you're a bit of an old cynic like me, I suspect, aren't you? Right. What do you make of all this?
Well, a couple of things. I guess there's three things I'd really like to say. One is Jenny Randalls was saying that 95% of UFOs can be explained. So my first question is, well, then why shouldn't the other 5% eventually be explained as well? Why do we have to hypothesize that there are aliens visiting the planet? When it comes to hypnosis, I think there was an interesting study done a while back where they took a bunch of high school students and hypnotized them, and half of them came out with, you know, sort of science fiction stories about being abducted and spaceships and so forth. And there was a researcher named Melvin Harris who did some research into Bloxham tapes, which were hypnotic recollections, I think, of somebody being reincarnated, and managed to match the recollections to 19th century French novels, I think it was, that this woman had read. So I'm not personally convinced that that's the best way to get evidence. And that comes to my third point, which is, if aliens are landing on the planet all the time, why do they never land somewhere where we can all agree, yes, a spaceship is landed? I mean, if a spaceship landed on top of Buckingham Palace tomorrow, we could all agree it was there, and then we could argue about whether or not the Queen should pay for the damage.
I'm going to say we might have to take a shift. Yeah, exactly.
I am a hypnotist.
You're what, sir?
I'm a hypnotist.
Yeah.
Yes. And susceptibility is inherent with hypnosis. And there are times that the subject, because of the harmony, because of the rapport between operator and patient, that the patient can actually give questions, give answers, what is assumed.
Yeah. All right, I'd like to take the hypnosis out of it for a minute, because although it's crucial and central to Linda's experience, what we're really talking about here is people who've seen things. Now, you heard what she said. She's in fact implying this is all explained, really. This can all be explained somehow or other.
Well, the main thing is, Wendy, have you seen anything unusual yourself?
I would count myself as a very unreliable witness on the sky, because I do not look at the sky very carefully. But that's no shame. President Carter thought he saw a UFO, and it turned out to be the planet Venus.
Well, that's what they was put over. But I'd like to point out that I've just been to America and Germany to conferences, and they showed material from Russia, Germany, Hungary. This is all on videotape, outside broadcasts. And I would like to point out that the UN now has set up a special monitoring the thing recently into the UFO phenomena.
Gentleman behind you is going to say, so what?
As we said in the break, there's still no tangible proof, no physical proof. There's nothing there, no piece of metal, nothing like that. It's all on videotape. Anything that can be doctored, as the lady said down there, it can be doctored.
Gentleman behind you, then these people over here.
Yes, 30 years ago, I saw UFOs with a friend, and for a time we turned our eyes away and said, no, this can't be happening. We looked again, it was still there. It was quite a spectacle. Now, the atmosphere at the time went extremely quiet. It was very strange. My recall of that night is very clear, but probably the most interesting thing to me is that at the end of that week in the local press, there was a very large report on how the local police station had been inundated with calls from other people who'd seen something in the sky. Okay, whatever it was is one thing, but however unidentified flying objects they were.
Okay, gentleman here, yes.
There's no doubt, John, that such experiences, UFO experiences, really do imprint themselves very deeply on the psyche of humanity. And let's consider that it changes your life in the same way that if you tell somebody you've seen Jesus Christ, it changes your life. Let's say it's just another phenomenon, which is the question of the human spirit for progress.
Right. I don't think anyone's doubting the testimony of these people. These people are perfectly genuine.
And the thing is, as a hypnotherapist, I can't either prove or disprove that a person under hypnosis is telling me the truth. But what I can say, that the psyche is revealing something. Jung calls it the collective unconscious. There are thousands of them.
All right, let's chat some way a long time.
John, given that there are sort of aliens trying to contact Earth, why is it that we always presume that they're trying to contact human life? I think the basis of Star Trek 4 was that a probe was trying to reach whales in the ocean. Could it not be feasible that they're trying to reach some other sort of animal life or even plant life?
Why is it then, if this is all going on, Jenny, why is it that the eminent scientists and experts that the government employs don't acknowledge it?
They do. But you see, the point is, why assume that they're aliens? Wendy makes this assumption that the 5% that are unexplained are the same as the 95% that aren't. If that was true, there would be no serious UFO research. It isn't true. But the 5% that are unexplained don't have to be aliens. They can be other things which we don't have answers for
This
yet.
lady at the back, we're running out of time. Go.
I found this after a sighting the following morning. It's a piece of rock. We've had it analysed. It stands 1,000 degrees centigrade is its melting point, and it reverts back to its original state when it's cooled.
How do you account for that?
We don't know. We don't know what it is. It's been in 4 different types of acid and withstood it. It will cut glass. You know, there's so many things. It's not, a piece of it is now at Harvard University.
Very quick word.
I was just wondering if Jenny thinks that some of these sightings couldn't be like secret research development projects by the governments.
What a thought to go out on. Good heavens, that's all we've time for. I've got to say bye-bye and hand over to our chums on this morning.
Thank you, John. Greetings. You're watching This Morning.